Chosen one, something is different about today, and if you felt it the moment you pressed play, that feeling is not accidental. There are people who stumble into messages like this one, and then there are people who were sent here, and you already know which one you are. You did not find this by chance. You were directed here by something far greater than an algorithm, far greater than a passing curiosity, and that distinction matters more than you might realize right now. There are signs that only chosen ones carry, and most of the world will never understand them. The first is that your dreams have become sharper and stranger in recent months. Not nightmares exactly, but vivid, layered experiences that feel like they are trying to tell you something you have not quite been able to translate. The second sign is that you feel a restlessness that no amount of sleep, no vacation, no distraction can quiet. It is not anxiety in the clinical sense. It is more like the feeling of standing backstage, knowing your cue is coming, but not being able to see the stage yet. The third sign is that you have grown increasingly uncomfortable in spaces that used to feel normal. Conversations that once satisfied you now feel shallow. Environments that once felt safe now feel too small. You have not become difficult. You have become aware. The fourth sign is that you keep returning to the same quiet ache, a sense that you were made for something specific, something real, something that has not fully arrived yet, and that the life you are currently living, as good or as hard as it may be, is not the complete picture. And the fifth sign, the one that almost no one talks about, is that you feel simultaneously exhausted and electric. Tired of waiting, yes. Tired of explaining yourself, yes. But underneath all of that tiredness is a current, something alive and humming, as if your spirit already knows what your mind is still waiting to confirm. These are not coincidences. These are not personality quirks. These are the unmistakable markings of a life that has been set apart for something this world does not have a category for yet. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not forgotten. Heaven has not been silent because it has nothing to say. Heaven has been precise, and what is being released over your life right now is not something small, not a mild improvement, not a modest upgrade. What is coming is a shift so complete that the version of you sitting here today will look back on this moment as the turning point. Not one of the turning points. The turning point. You have not been waiting for this moment. This moment has been waiting for you. Before I take you deeper into what this season truly means, I want to pause for just a moment and share something with you. Because I believe in giving people every resource available, not just the spiritual ones. Scientists who study high-functioning human beings, people who operate with extraordinary clarity, creativity, and purpose, have found something remarkable in the brain. There is a specific frequency called gamma, and research shows that individuals who carry a strong sense of calling, those who experience vivid intuition, sharp pattern recognition, and deep creative insight, tend to produce this frequency at higher levels than average. Dr. James Rivers, a neuroscientist with over 30 years of research affiliated with MIT, spent the better part of his career studying why this frequency is so powerful and why so many adults, especially those who have walked through long seasons of hardship, seem to lose access to it over time. What he discovered became the foundation of something called the Genius Wave, a 7-minute audio program designed to restore and amplify the very frequency that chosen ones are born carrying. 7 minutes, that is all it takes. If you feel something stir in you, when I describe it, the link is already waiting for you in the pinned comment below. We will come back to this in much greater detail very soon. But I did not want to take you through everything that is about to unfold without first giving you that anchor. Now let me come back to you. Because what I said a moment ago about this season deserves to be opened all the way. The shift you are sensing in your spirit is not imagination. It is not wishful thinking. It is spiritual perception, and it is working correctly. There is a category of human being that the ancient writers understood well, but that modern culture has almost entirely lost the language for. That category is the person who is called before they are commissioned. The person whose life is shaped by a purpose that arrived before they had the vocabulary to name it. You have felt the weight of that, calling your entire life, even when you could not articulate it, even when you tried to set it down and walk away from it. It came back. It always comes back, because it is not a feeling you generated. It is a design that was placed inside you. What happens to people like you during seasons of waiting is that the calling does not disappear. It goes inward, it roots, it deepens below the surface in ways that you cannot see, but that everything around you is slowly being arranged to support. The relationships that did not work out were not failures. They were removals. The opportunities that closed were not rejections. They were redirections. The silence you have lived through was not absence. It was preparation at a depth that does not make noise. And here is what I want you to understand above everything else I will say today. The size of what God is about to do in your life is directly connected to the length of what you have already endured. Small assignments do not require long preparation. What you have been through tells you something about the scale of what is coming. The wilderness is always proportional to the promise. You were not born to live a small life. You were not designed for the edges of things. You were made for the center of something significant. And the reason it has taken this long is not because God forgot the address. It is because the work being done in you required time that could not be rushed, and depth that could not be faked. Before I show you what that means in practical terms, I want to give you 3 steps you can do right now, right where you are, to begin opening the channel between where you are standing and where you are being called. The first step is this. Think of one thing you are grateful for that did not happen. Not something you received, but something you were spared. A relationship that ended before it could do more damage. A door that closed before you walked through it into the wrong room. Sit with that for 30 seconds and recognize that the grace that protected you then is still active now. The second step is to say this quietly, either out loud or in your heart. Say, I am not waiting, I am arriving. Not as a declaration you have to perform, just as a reorientation. Let your understanding of time shift from feeling stuck to feeling in motion. The third step is 7 minutes of silence, not meditation if that word feels foreign to you. Simply stillness. Set a timer, close your eyes, and let everything you have just heard settle into the part of you that already knows it is true. When those 7 minutes are over, something in you will be different. Not dramatically, not loudly, but differently aligned. If something is stirring in you right now, and you sense that another chosen one, somewhere on the other side of a screen, in the middle of their own quiet crisis, is about to find this message, then consider pressing the like button so that this reaches them. Leave a word in the comments below, even one word, because there are people in this community of chosen ones who need to know they are not alone in what they are carrying. Share this with one person who has been struggling in silence. And subscribe so that the next message finds you without you having to go searching. And if you feel moved to pass the light a little further, the donation link is also in the pinned comment below. Not as an obligation, but as an act of blessing someone you will never meet who needs exactly this. Now, when those 7 minutes are done, I want to give you the full picture of what I briefly mentioned. Because what Dr. James Rivers discovered deserves more than a passing reference. And what it means for someone like you deserves to be fully understood. Chosen ones carry a specific frequency. This is not a metaphor. This is not spiritual language dressed up to sound scientific. Researchers who study peak human performance, extraordinary creativity, and deep intuitive intelligence have identified a brainwave pattern that appears consistently in people who operate at the highest levels of clarity and purpose. Scientists call it gamma. And the reason this matters to you specifically is that everything you have been experiencing, the vivid dreams, the restlessness, the sense of being made for something larger, the inability to settle for less than what you know is possible, all of it is consistent with a brain that is wired to produce this frequency at a higher baseline than most people ever reach. You were born with this. It is not something you developed through discipline or earned through suffering. It is part of the original design placed in you before you had any say in the matter. But here is what the research also shows. Long seasons of hardship, sustained stress, prolonged waiting, and the specific kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying a calling that has not yet been fulfilled, these experiences suppress gamma over time, not permanently, but significantly. The frequency that should be firing clearly, the one that drives creativity, insight, pattern, recognition, and the kind of focused clarity that turns vision into action, gets quieted by the weight of everything you have been carrying. This is not a character flaw. This is not a spiritual failure. This is biology responding to circumstance, and it is reversible. Dr. James Rivers has spent over 30 years studying exactly this. His research, affiliated with both MIT and NASA, focused on why certain individuals seem to access states of heightened mental clarity that others cannot replicate, even with years of practice. What he found at the center of that research was the relationship between two specific brainwave states, theta and gamma, and the way those states interact to produce what most people would describe as moments of sudden brilliance, deep, knowing, and effortless creative flow. Theta waves, which operate at a frequency between 4 and 8 cycles per second, are the brain waves most active during deep relaxation, vivid dreaming, and the kind of open, receptive thinking that allows new ideas to arrive without being forced. Children spend enormous amounts of time in theta. So do people during prayer, during creative work, and during the kind of quiet waiting that is not passive but deeply attentive. Gamma waves, which operate at a much higher frequency, are what the brain produces when it is connecting information across large distances within itself, when it is having what researchers sometimes call eureka moments, when it is operating at the level of insight rather than just analysis. What Dr. Rivers discovered is that these two states can be deliberately activated together, not through years of meditation practice, not through pharmaceutical intervention, not through any technique that requires special skill or extended training, through sound, specifically through a precisely calibrated audio sequence that uses what researchers call brainwave entrainment, the brain's natural tendency to synchronize its own electrical activity with rhythmic external signals. This is the science behind the genius wave. The 7 minutes of silence I asked you to practice at the end of part 1 were not random. That pause was itself a preparation, a moment of genuine stillness that began opening the exact channels that the genius wave is designed to deepen. 7 minutes is not an arbitrary number. Dr. Rivers and his team found through years of testing that 7 minutes is the precise show in which the brain can be guided into the theta gamma state without triggering the fatigue response that longer sessions often produce. It is long enough to create a measurable shift, short enough to do every single day without disruption. You do not need to understand neuroscience to use this. You do not need to meditate. You do not need to clear your mind or hold a specific posture or achieve any particular state before pressing play. You simply listen, with a pair of headphones if possible, and you let your brain do what it was already designed to do. Now I want you to understand something deeper about why this matters specifically for you in this season, at this exact moment in your life. The calling you carry does not operate in isolation from the mind that holds it. Your vision, your sense of purpose, your ability to recognize open doors and move through them with confidence, all of this lives at the intersection of the spiritual and the neurological. When your gamma frequency is suppressed, it does not mean your calling has disappeared. It means the instrument through which that calling expresses itself is not yet tuned. Think of it this way: a musician who carries extraordinary gifts but whose instrument has gone out of tune does not become less gifted. The gift remains intact, but what comes out of the instrument no longer reflects what the musician hears internally. The genius wave is not creating something new in you. It is restoring the clarity of what was always there. It is returning your instrument to the pitch it was always meant to produce. And this is why the timing of this feels significant to so many people who encounter it during seasons of transition. Because it is in exactly those seasons, when the old chapter is closing and the new one has not yet fully opened, that the brain most needs the kind of coherent, sustained clarity that gamma produces. Decisions made from suppressed frequency tend to be fearful, reactive, and small. Decisions made from a restored gamma state tend to be grounded, creative, and aligned with the deeper current of your life. This is not about becoming a different person. It is about thinking and perceiving and deciding as the fullest version of the person you already are. There is also something worth naming about the cumulative effect of daily use. The genius wave is not designed as a one-time experience. It is designed as a daily practice, and the researchers behind it found that consistent use over a period of weeks produced changes that occasional use simply did not. Users reported not just improved focus and creativity in the hours immediately following the 7-minute session, but a gradual lasting shift in how they approached problems, how they responded to setbacks, and how clearly they were able to perceive what mattered and what did not. The frequency, once restored and consistently maintained, begins to reshape the baseline. The brain that was running low begins to run full. A woman named Sandra had been in a season of professional paralysis for nearly 3 years. She had the vision, the skills, and the connections. But every time she moved toward the next step, something in her would seize up. She described it as knowing exactly where she wanted to go, but being unable to make her legs move in that direction. She began using the genius wave for 7 minutes each morning before checking her phone or speaking to anyone. Within the first 2 weeks, she said she noticed that the paralysis had been replaced by something she described as quiet certainty. She did not feel electric or euphoric. She felt clear. 3 months later, she had launched the project she had been circling for years and had secured her first significant client. She told me she did not believe a 7-minute audio file could do what years of journaling and counseling had not, and then she tried it anyway, and everything changed. I know some of you are thinking that $39 is not nothing, and that planning is complete valid. You have been careful with your resources because you have had to be. You have learned not to spend on things that promise much and deliver little. I understand that. I want you to hold that wisdom and also consider this. The genius wave is not asking you to believe it will work before you try it. It is offering you 90 days to find out. If in 90 days you do not feel that your clarity, your focus, your creative energy, or your sense of forward movement has shifted in any meaningful way, you receive every dollar back. No questions, no process, no argument. The regular price of the Genius Wave is $49. Through the link in the pinned comment below, you can access it today for $39. That link is the only verified source. There are imitation products circulating online that use similar language and similar imagery, and I want to be direct with you about this because I do not want you to waste your money or your trust on something that is not the real program. The only safe and legitimate place to access the Genius Wave is through the single link pinned in the comments below. Please do not purchase it anywhere else. This offer at the reduced price is not permanent. The number of people who can access it at $39 is limited, and when that threshold is reached, the price returns to $49. If something in you recognized itself when I described the gamma frequency, if something in you stirred when I talked about the waiting season, suppressing the very frequency you were born with, then that recognition is worth honoring. The link is waiting for you. It is not going anywhere. But the window at this price is genuinely limited, and I would rather you know that clearly than discover it after the moment has passed. What you carry is too important to remain suppressed. The frequency you were born with deserves to be restored, and the life that is waiting on the other side of that restoration is not a fantasy. It is the one you were always meant to be living. 7 minutes a day is a small investment for a return that no spreadsheet can fully calculate, because what is being restored is not just your productivity or your focus. What is being restored is your ability to live as the fullest, clearest, most aligned version of who you were created to be. And that version of you has been waiting long enough. There is something I want to name for you right now, something that most people in your life have not had the language to say, and that you may have spent years trying to find words for on your own. What you have been living through is not ordinary difficulty. It is not the kind of hard that comes from bad decisions or wrong turns or a lack of effort. It is the specific, disorienting, deeply personal kind of hard that comes from carrying something significant in a world that does not yet have eyes to see it. And because the people around you could not see it, many of them assumed it was not there. But you always knew, even in your most doubtful moments, even when you tried to talk yourself out of it, you always knew something was there. There are 4 signs that people in this particular season will recognize immediately, and I want to name them one by one, slowly, because each one deserves to be seen clearly. The first sign is a sudden wave of sadness about the past that arrives. Without warning and without an obvious trigger, you will be doing something completely ordinary, washing dishes, driving to work, sitting in a meeting, and something will move through you like a current. Not grief exactly, but something adjacent to it. Kind of mourning for time that passed while you were waiting, for the version of your life you thought would have arrived by now, for relationships that did not survive the waiting season, for the younger version of you who believed it would. All come together faster than it did. This sadness is not depression. It is not a sign that something is wrong with you emotionally. It is the soul's way of acknowledging the real cost of a long preparation. It is honest. It is appropriate. And it does not mean you are moving backward. It means you are finally mature enough to look at what the journey has cost without being destroyed by what you see. The second sign is that familiar places and people have begun to feel heavy and strange. The environment that used to feel like home feels slightly off, like a shoe that no longer fits the foot it was made for. Conversations that used to feel satisfying now leave you with a hollow feeling, not because the people have changed, but because you have. You have grown in directions that the old containers were not built to hold, and that mismatch creates a specific kind of loneliness that is very difficult to explain to someone who has not experienced it. You are not being antisocial. You are not becoming arrogant or disconnected. You are becoming someone whose next chapter requires a different landscape, and your spirit is already leaning toward that landscape, even while your body is still standing in the old one. The third sign is a recurring image or dream about an unopened door. It does not always appear during sleep. Sometimes it comes as a waking impression, a sense of standing in front of something that has not yet swung open. You can feel the weight of it. You can sense what might be on the other side. But the handle has not turned yet, and the waiting at that threshold has become one of the defining experiences of this season. What I want you to understand about that door is this: the fact that you keep returning to it in dreams, in quiet moments, in prayer, is not a sign of obsession or impatience. It is a sign of orientation. Your spirit knows where it is going. It is standing at the right address. The door is real, and the reason it has not opened yet is not because you are unworthy of what is behind it. It is because what is behind it is so significant that the timing of its opening is being held with extraordinary care. The fourth sign is that you keep encountering the same message in different places. A word from a sermon lands differently than it ever has before. A line in a book stops you completely. A stranger says something that feels like it was spoken directly into your specific situation. A song comes on at the exact moment you needed to hear it. This is not coincidence. This is not your mind looking for patterns and finding them because it wants to. This is something being communicated to you through multiple channels at once, because the message is important enough to be reinforced, and because the source of that message knows exactly which channels you are most likely to receive through. These four signs together paint a picture of a person who is not lost. They paint a picture of a person who is positioned, and that distinction is everything. I want to speak directly to the pain that lives underneath these signs, because it would be dishonest to describe the signs without acknowledging what they cost. The insomnia that comes with this season is real. Lying awake at 3 a.m. with a mind that will not quiet, running through the same questions, the same fears, the same half-formed hopes, is genuinely exhausting. The loneliness is real. Being in a room full of people who love you and still feeling fundamentally unseen is one of the most isolating experiences a human being can have. The feeling of being wronged is real. There are things that were taken from you, opportunities that were blocked, relationships that ended in ways that were not fair, and the wound of that injustice does not simply dissolve because time passes. And the feeling of being misunderstood is perhaps the most persistent of all. When you try to explain what you sense is coming, when you try to articulate the scale of what you believe your life is moving toward, and the people listening look at you with polite skepticism or quiet concern, that experience leaves a mark. It makes you go quiet in rooms where you should be speaking. It makes you small in spaces where you were meant to be large. But here is what I need you to understand about every single one of those pains. They are not evidence that you were wrong about yourself. They are evidence that what you are carrying is real enough to have cost something. Real. Small things do not extract that kind of price. Ordinary destinies do not require that level of endurance. The cost of your waiting season is proportional to the weight of what you are being prepared to carry. And the weight of what you are being prepared for is greater than you have yet allowed yourself to fully believe. There is a difference between being overlooked and being positioned, and that difference changes everything about how you interpret your history. To be overlooked means that you were present, you were qualified, and you were passed by. To be positioned means that you were deliberately placed exactly where you are by a hand that could see what you could not, for a purpose that has not yet been fully revealed. The people who overlooked you were not in charge of your placement. They were never the ones holding your assignment. And the moments that felt like rejection were not the universe confirming your smallness. They were the hand of something greater, moving you away from what would have limited you and toward what was always meant to contain you. You were not abandoned in this season. You were protected in it. You were not forgotten. You were being formed. You were not left behind. You were being kept back from the wrong things long enough for the right things to arrive. And the arrival is closer than it has ever been. The signs you are carrying in your body and your spirit right now are not the signs of someone who is still at the beginning of their waiting. They are the signs of someone who is at the end of it now. As I have just named what you have been living, and as you feel the recognition of being truly seen settling into you, I want to gently pause here and say something. What is happening in you right now as you listen is not just personal. There are chosen ones all across the world arriving at this exact same recognition, at this exact same moment. People in different time zones, different languages, different circumstances, all of whom are being named and seen for the first time in a long time. If this message has found you, it can find them too. Consider pressing like so that it travels further and reaches the next person who is ready to be named. Leave a word in the comments below as a way of marking that you were here, that you showed up for yourself today, and that you did not turn away from what you recognized. Share this with someone who has been struggling to find stillness in a noisy season, someone who needs to hear their signs named as clearly as you just heard yours. And if you feel moved to leave a blessing for the next person who finds their way to this recognition, the way to do that is in the pinned comment below. Choose to remain part of this community of chosen ones by subscribing, not as a platform action, but as a decision to stay in this space where you are seen and named and not required to make yourself smaller. If you recognize yourself in what I have just described, if the 4 signs landed somewhere true inside you, if the distinction between being overlooked and being positioned shifted something in how you see your own story, then I want to invite you to type the word "ready" in the comments below. Not as a performance, not as a declaration you have to earn, just as a simple, honest acknowledgement that something in you has received what was just spoken. Type the word "ready," and as you do, know that you are not typing it alone. You are typing it in the company of every other chosen one who is arriving at this same threshold at this same time. What I want to move into now is the part of this conversation that many people find the most difficult, not because it is complicated, but because it requires looking honestly at what this season has actually taken from you, not what you gained from it yet, but what it cost. And I want to do that with you without rushing past it, without reframing it too quickly, without turning it into a lesson before it has had the chance to simply be acknowledged as a loss. Because some of what was taken from you deserves to be mourned before it is redeemed. There are things this season has taken from you that deserve to be named without a silver lining attached. Not everything needs to be reframed immediately. Not every wound needs to be turned into a lesson before it has had the chance to simply be held and acknowledged as a real and significant loss. And I think one of the reasons so many chosen ones carry a quiet, unnamed grief underneath all of their faith and all of their forward motion is that no one has ever sat with them in the cost of it. Everyone wants to get to the redemption. Everyone wants to skip to the part where it all made sense. But before we get there, I want to stay here for a moment, in the honest weight of what the years have taken. The first thing this season may have taken from you is relationships that could have been built. There were people who came into your life during this period who might have become something lasting, something meaningful, something that would have anchored you in ways you still feel the absence of. But the version of you that was walking through the wilderness was not always available in the ways those relationships required. You were distracted by survival. You were guarded from repeated disappointment. You were so focused on holding yourself together that you did not always have the capacity to hold someone else as well. And some of those people moved on. Some of those connections dried up before they could root. Some of the friendships that might have become the deepest ones of your life faded because the season you were in did not leave room for the kind of presence that deep friendship requires. That is a real loss. It deserves to be acknowledged as one. The second thing this season may have taken from you is a career that could have gone further by now. There were opportunities that came and went during the waiting. Moments where you could see the door opening and something, fear perhaps, or timing, or circumstances entirely outside your control, meant that you did not walk through it. There are positions you were qualified for that went to someone else. There are projects you poured yourself into that did not produce what they should have. There are years of effort that feel, when you look back honestly, like they did not move the needle in the ways you believed they would. You worked, you showed up, you gave what you had, and the return did not match the investment. That is painful in a way that is very specific, the pain of effort that was genuine and real, and still did not produce what it deserved to produce. You are allowed to grieve that without immediately telling yourself it was all part of the plan. The third thing this season may have taken from you is the freedom to say your dreams out loud. Somewhere along the way, after enough raised eyebrows, after enough well-meaning concern from people who loved you but could not see what you saw, after enough seasons of announcing something and then watching it not materialize in the time frame you expected, you learned to go quiet about the biggest things inside you. You stopped leading with the vision. You stopped letting people into the full scope of what you believed your life was moving toward. You became strategic about who you trusted with the sacred parts of your interior world. And while that discretion may have protected you, it also cost you something. There is a loneliness that comes from carrying your most significant hopes in silence, from never being able to simply say the thing out loud and have someone receive it without flinching. That loneliness is real, and it has accumulated over the years in ways that are not always visible, but are always present. The fourth thing this season may have taken from you is something even more fundamental than any of the external losses. It may have taken portions of your faith in yourself. Not your faith in God. Perhaps that has remained intact even through the hardest stretches. But your faith in your own perception, your trust in your own instincts, your confidence that what you sense and see and know inside yourself is reliable. When a long time passes between the promise and its fulfillment, when the thing you believed would come has not yet come, a quiet but corrosive question begins to form. What if I was wrong about myself? What I thought was a calling was actually just a wish? What if the reason this has taken so long is not that I am being prepared for something great, but simply that I was mistaken about the greatness in the first place? That question is one of the most damaging things the waiting season can produce, because it does not attack from the outside. It works from within. It uses your own voice, and it is a lie dressed so convincingly in the language of humility and realism that it is very difficult to identify as what it actually is. I want to sit with all of that for a moment before I say anything else. I want you to feel that it has been seen. Relationships, the career, the silenced dreams, the eroded self-trust. These are not small things. These are not the kind of losses that a single encouraging message can simply dissolve. They are real. They accumulated over real time, and they deserve to be acknowledged as the genuine cost of a season that asked more of you than most people around you will ever fully understand. Now I want to bring you to a story, not to rush past the pain, but because there is a man in the ancient text whose experience speaks so directly to where you are right now that I would be withholding something important from you if I did not name him. His name was Elijah. And by any external measure, Elijah was one of the most supernaturally empowered individuals in the entire biblical narrative. He had stood on a mountaintop and called down fire from heaven in front of hundreds of witnesses. He had declared a drought, and the sky had obeyed him. He had spoken with an authority that even kings feared. If you had described Elijah to someone who had never met him, they would have imagined a man who walked through the world with unshakable confidence, with a chest full of faith and a spirit that never wavered. And then came the day described in 1 Kings chapter 19, and the picture could not have been more different. Elijah was running, not walking purposefully toward the next assignment. Running, fleeing in fear from a single threat, from one person who had declared his life forfeit. This same man who had stood fearlessly before crowds and called heaven to respond was now alone in the wilderness, sitting under a juniper tree and saying words that are among the most painfully honest in all of Scripture. He said he had had enough. He asked for it to be over. He lay down in the desert, exhausted beyond the capacity to take another step, and he slept. I want you to notice something about this moment. Elijah did not arrive at the juniper tree because he had stopped believing. He arrived there because he had been giving everything he had for a very long time, and the weight of it had finally exceeded what he could carry alone. The wilderness under the juniper tree was not a place of spiritual failure. It was a place of complete human depletion. And what I want you to hold is the specific texture of what Elijah was experiencing in that moment. He was not doubting the reality of what he had seen God do. He was simply out of the strength required to keep standing in it. He was not faithless. He was finished. There is a difference, and it matters enormously, because you may be at your own juniper tree right now. You may be in the place where the faith is still present, but the strength to keep performing it in front of others has run out. Where you are no longer able to maintain the appearance of confidence that the people around you have come to expect from you. Where you have quietly laid down beneath the weight of a season that has lasted longer than you believed you could survive, and you have said, in your own private language, that you have had enough. If that is where you are, then what happened next for Elijah is not just a story. It is a word addressed directly to you. But I am not going to rush to the resolution yet. I want to leave you here for just a moment longer, in the honest acknowledgement that the juniper tree is a real place, that the depletion is real, that the cost of this season is real, and that none of it disqualifies you from what is coming. The tree was not the end of Elijah's story, and it is not the end of yours. The exhaustion you just allowed yourself to acknowledge, the real and specific cost of years that ask more of you than you could always carry gracefully does not need to be immediately transformed into a lesson. But I want to offer you something now. Not a solution, not a shortcut. Something older than both of those things. I want to offer you a language, an ancient framework for understanding time itself, because I believe that one of the deepest sources of pain in your waiting season has not been the waiting itself, but the way you have been measuring it. And when the measurement changes, something fundamental shifts in how the entire journey feels. There are two words in the ancient Greek language for time, and the difference between them is not academic. It is not a matter of translation or linguistics. It is a matter of how you understand your own life. The first word is chronos. This is the time you already know. It is the time on your phone, the time on your calendar, time that measures how many months have passed since the promise was made and how many more might pass before it arrives. Chronos is sequential, relentless, and completely indifferent to your readiness. It moves whether you are prepared or not. It does not slow down when you need more of it, and it does not speed up when the waiting becomes unbearable. Chronos is the time that has been making you feel late. It is the time that whispers you should be further along by now. It is the time that turns birthdays into reminders of distance rather than celebrations of arrival. And almost every measurement you have applied to your own life during this season has been a chronos measurement. But the second word is kairos, and kairos does not mean time in the same sense at all. Kairos means the appointed moment, the right time, the moment that is not determined by how many seconds have elapsed, but by how complete the preparation is, by how precisely the conditions have aligned, by how ready the person standing at the threshold actually is to receive and carry what is about to be placed in their hands. Kairos is not a point on a calendar. It is a convergence. It is the moment when everything that needed to be in place is finally in place, and what seemed to be delayed from a chronos perspective arrives exactly on time from a kairos perspective. When you have been measuring your life in chronos, every year that passed without the breakthrough felt like evidence of failure, of divine forgetfulness, of a gap between what was promised and what was being delivered. But when you begin to understand your life through the lens of kairos, those same years look entirely different. They are not years of delay. They are years of assembly. Every relationship that ended, every door that closed, every season of silence that felt like abandonment, every stripping away of what you thought you needed, all of it was the preparation being made complete. You were not being held back. You were being built forward. And the kairos moment, your appointed arrival, was never going to come one day before the preparation was finished, not because God was withholding, but because arriving before you were ready would not have served the fullness of what was meant to be carried. You are not late. You never were. You have been living in chronos language applied to a kairos reality, and that mismatch is one of the most quietly devastating things a chosen one can experience, because it makes faithfulness feel like failure. It makes endurance feel like stagnation. It makes the very process of being prepared feel like being forgotten. But the truth is this: the preparation that has been happening in you during these years is not something that could have been compressed or rushed. It required the exact amount of time it took. Not a day more, not a day less. And the fact that you are still here, still showing up, still leaning toward the thing you were called to, even after everything the waiting cost you, is itself evidence that the preparation worked. You did not break. You did not walk away permanently. You bent under the weight of it, and then you rose again. And that rising is the final stage of the assembly. This is positioning, not reward for effort. I want to be precise about that distinction. because many chosen ones carry a hidden belief that the breakthrough is coming, because they have finally suffered enough, because they have paid the price in full, because the endurance has earned them what was promised. And while the endurance is real and the faithfulness is beautiful, the Kairos moment does not arrive as a reward. It arrives as an appointment. It was scheduled before the waiting began. The preparation was the path to it, but not the payment for it. What is coming to you is not compensation. It is fulfillment. There is a difference that matters deeply to how you receive it when it arrives. Now I want to bring you a second ancient concept, because the Kairos framework addresses the question of timing. But there is another question that lives underneath the timing question, and it is this: what do I do with the darkness of the moment I am currently standing in? What do I do with the midnight of it? In the symbolic language of the ancient writers, midnight held a specific and layered meaning. It was not simply the middle of the night. It was the threshold hour. The hour that was simultaneously the deepest point of darkness and the precise boundary between one day and the next. Midnight was the moment that belonged to neither the day that had ended nor the day that had not yet begun. It was the in-between, the suspended place. The hour that felt most like nothing was moving, precisely because everything was about to move. The writers and storytellers who used midnight as a symbol were pointing to something they had observed repeatedly in the lives of people who carried significant callings. The darkest moment, the most disorienting hour, the point at which hope seemed most extinguished, was consistently the threshold of transition, not the middle of the waiting, not a point somewhere before the end. The end itself, dressed in the clothing of the worst moment. Midnight looked like the conclusion of all hope, because it was the conclusion of the old season. And the new day, by its nature, could not begin until the old one had fully ended. You may be standing at your midnight right now, and if you are, I want you to hear this with everything in you. The darkness you are in is not the darkness of abandonment. It is the darkness of threshold. There is a difference between the dark of an empty room and the dark of a doorway. In an empty room, the darkness is the destination. In a doorway, the darkness is temporary, the space between the place you are leaving and the place you are entering. And it only feels like the end because you cannot yet see the other side. At midnight, when everyone around you thought it was finished, when the circumstances offered no logical evidence that anything was about to change, heaven began to move. Not because the darkness ended on its own, but because the appointed hour arrived, and the appointed hour does not announce itself in advance. It simply comes, and when it comes, the shift is not gradual. It is decisive. It is the kind of change that makes you look back at the midnight and understand, perhaps for the first time, that the darkness was never the destination. It was the door. This is where you are, not in the middle of your wilderness, not at another resting point before more waiting. You are at the threshold of your Kairos, standing in the last moments of your midnight. And the reason it feels so dark right now is not because the light is far away. It is because the light is so close that the contrast has become almost unbearable. And if your mind, conditioned by years of chronos thinking, needs something practical to hold on to in this moment, I want to gently remind you that the Genius Wave, the 7-minute program from Dr. James Rivers that I mentioned earlier, was designed precisely for this kind of threshold season, when the mind is standing between midnight and morning, between the old season and the new one. The clarity of the gamma frequency becomes not just helpful, but essential. The link remains in the pinned comment below, not as a pressure, but as a resource placed there for exactly the person who is standing where you are standing right now. When you are ready, It will be there. What matters most in this moment is that you understand the landscape you are standing in. You are not lost in the dark. You are at the door of the dawn. And the dawn that is coming for your life is not a modest one. It is the kind that changes everything, that makes the long night make sense at last, that turns every Chronos measurement that ever made you feel late into evidence of a Kairos appointment that was always coming precisely on time. Something is moving, not might be moving, not could be moving if you do the right things or believe hard enough or finally get out of your own way. Something is already in motion, and it has been in motion longer than you realized. Working beneath the surface of everything that looked still, arranging what needed to be arranged, removing what needed to be removed, positioning what needed to be in place before the visible shift could begin. What I want to do now is make that movement concrete for you, because vague hope is not enough for where you are standing. You need to be able to see the shape of what is coming so that when it begins to appear, you recognize it instead of second-guessing it. There are 3 specific areas of your life that are about to change, and I want to describe each one with enough detail that something in you nods and says, yes, that is exactly what I have been sensing. The first area is your relationships, and the shift here is going to feel both disorienting and deeply right at the same time. What is coming is not simply new people entering your life. What is coming first is a quiet and sometimes uncomfortable clearing. People who have occupied significant space in your world. People you have known for years. People you care about genuinely are going to begin creating distance in ways that may feel painful in the moment, but that your spirit will recognize as necessary. This is not rejection. This is realignment. The relationships that are designed to carry you into the next chapter of your life cannot enter a space that is still fully occupied by the relationships that belong to the previous one. Some of these transitions will be gentle. People will simply grow busy, move away, drift into different rhythms. Others will be more abrupt, and those abrupt endings will sting. But I want you to pay attention to what comes after the clearing, because what comes after is the part that will make the stinging worthwhile. New people are going to arrive, and they are going to arrive with a precision that will surprise you. They will show up in unexpected places, at unexpected times, and you will recognize them not necessarily by an immediate sense of comfort, but by a deep sense of rightness, a feeling of finally being in a room where you do not have to translate yourself. These are the people who carry the same frequency you carry. They have been shaped by their own wilderness seasons in ways that make them capable of understanding yours without needing it explained. They are not coming to complete you. They are coming to stand alongside you. And together, you will be able to move in directions that neither of you could have moved alone. The relationships of your next chapter are built for the weight of what you are carrying. The ones that are leaving were not, and that is not a judgment on them. It is simply a recognition that different seasons require different companions. The second area that is about to change is your sense of purpose, and this shift is going to come in a form that might surprise you. You may have been expecting a dramatic revelation, a moment of overwhelming clarity, where everything suddenly crystallizes, and you know with absolute certainty exactly what you are supposed to do and exactly how to do it. What is actually coming is quieter than that and more powerful than that. The question of what you are supposed to do with your life, the question that has been circling in you for years, the question that has kept you awake and driven you to search and made you feel like something essential was missing, is going to begin answering itself in one clear small step, not the whole staircase. One step, And the reason it will come as a single step rather than the full picture is not because the full picture does not exist. It is because the full picture is so much larger than what your current vantage point can contain. And if you were shown all of it at once, it would overwhelm the very clarity you need to begin moving. The step that is coming is going to feel almost too small. It is going to feel obvious in a way that makes you wonder why you have been waiting for something more dramatic. But I want you to trust the smallness of it, because chosen ones who step faithfully into one clear small step consistently discover that the next step becomes visible precisely because they move. The path does not reveal itself in full before you walk it. It reveals itself one step at a time to the person who is already walking. What you should not do during this period is wait for certainty before you act. Certainty is not what the step is offering you. What the step is offering you is direction, and direction is enough to begin. You do not need to see the destination clearly to take the next step toward it. You need only to know that the step in front of you is the right one. And if something in you quiets when you consider it, if the restlessness that has been your constant companion settles for a moment when you hold it, that settling is your confirmation. The third area that is about to change is your relationship with resources and opportunities. And this is the shift that many chosen ones find most difficult to receive, because years of striving and disappointment have trained them to approach provision with a defensive crouch, always bracing for the next closed door, always preparing for the next season of scarcity. What is coming requires you to begin releasing that posture, not naively, not without wisdom, but with the genuine recognition that the season of fighting for what is yours is ending, and the season of receiving what is yours is beginning. There is a difference between striving and receiving that goes beyond attitude. It is structural. In the striving season, you had to push against resistance at every turn, because the doors were not yet aligned with your arrival. The timing was not yet right. The preparation was not yet complete. And the effort required was enormous precisely because you were moving against the current. But when the Kairos moment arrives, when the appointed time opens, the current shifts. What required extraordinary effort in the wrong season begins to require ordinary faithfulness in the right one. This does not mean you stop working. It means the work stops feeling like combat. It means opportunities begin to find you with the same energy you once had to spend hunting them. It means resources that were withheld in the previous season begin to flow in ways that make sense only if you understand that the withholding was never about your worthiness. It was about your readiness. And the readiness is now complete. What you should not do during this period is shrink back from what arrives because it feels too good to be true. Chosen ones who have lived through long seasons of scarcity develop a complicated relationship with abundance. When it begins to appear, the first instinct is often suspicion. The second instinct is guilt. Neither of those instincts belongs to your next chapter. What belongs to your next chapter is the ability to receive with open hands what was always meant for you, to steward it well, and to allow it to become the resource through which other people in their own waiting seasons find their way through. You can believe in this, not as a performance of faith you have to manufacture, as a recognition of what is already true. The ground beneath your life is already shifting. The three areas I have just described are not predictions. They are descriptions of a movement that is already underway. Your part is not to make it happen. Your part is to remain open enough to recognize it when it arrives and courageous enough not to talk yourself out of it when it does. During this period, there is one thing above all others I want to encourage you to guard against. And that is the temptation to explain away what is beginning to happen. When the new relationship arrives and feels almost too right, do not explain it away. When the one clear step becomes visible and feels almost too simple, do not explain it away. When the resource or opportunity appears in a way that does not match the logic of your previous season, do not explain it away. The mind that has been trained by years of disappointment will offer you very reasonable-sounding arguments for why this particular thing is probably not the thing. Do not let that voice have the final word. You have done the preparation. You have endured the wilderness. You have stood at the midnight. What is arriving now is not too good to be true. It is simply good, which after everything you have been through is something you have had to relearn how to receive. Chosen ones do not only receive what is given to them, they carry it forward. They multiply it. They become the answer to someone else's prayer in the same way that someone else's faithfulness once became the answer to theirs. Every person who finds this message is part of something larger than a single waiting season, a movement of chosen ones all across the world, arriving at their kairos at the same time. If that truth lands somewhere real in you, press like on this message as an act of choosing to be part of that movement. Drop a word in the comments as a signal to every other chosen one watching that they are not here alone. Share this with someone who is still in the thick of their waiting and needs to know that the ground is already shifting beneath them even when they cannot feel it yet. Choose to stay at this table by subscribing, not as a gesture toward a channel, but as a decision to remain in a community of people who are waking up together. And if you feel led to sow into the ground that grows something for the next person in line, that opportunity is in the pinned comment below. Type the word "receive" in the comments. If what I have just described is something your spirit is ready to step into, because that single word is a declaration that the defensive crouch is over and the open hands have begun. The ground is shifting beneath you, and you can feel it now in a way that is different from hope. It is more settled than hope. It is the quiet certainty of someone who has finally stopped arguing with their own calling and started walking toward it. And as you move into this next place, I want to give you something to carry with you. Not a strategy, not a to-do list. Something more personal than either of those things. I want to give you a name for who you are becoming. Because the person who emerges from a season like the one you have just walked through is not simply a stronger version of who went in. They are someone genuinely new, shaped by something that most people will never fully understand, carrying something that the world around them desperately needs. The name I want to give you is this: you are a waymaker. Not in the generic sense that word sometimes gets used, not as a title or a label or a piece of inspirational language to place on a coffee mug. I mean it in the most literal and specific sense possible. A waymaker is someone who does not simply find the path that was already there. A waymaker is someone whose very life creates passage where there was none before. When a waymaker moves through a landscape, something opens that was closed before they arrived. Not because they are more talented than everyone around them, not because they are louder or more aggressive or more strategically brilliant, but because they have been shaped by a season of waiting and wilderness and midnight that press something into them which cannot be manufactured any other way. The endurance produced it. The stripping away produced it. The years of carrying what no one else could see produced it. And what it produced is a person who can stand in the middle of an impossible situation and find the way through, not by strength alone, but by a kind of deep-rooted, spirit-led perception that knows where the opening is even when the walls look solid. A waymaker does not make the way for themselves only. That is the second and perhaps more important dimension of this name. Everything that has been prepared in you during this season, every layer of character that was formed in the wilderness, every expansion of capacity that happened in the midnight, every deepening of faith that occurred under the juniper tree, all of it was prepared not just for your own breakthrough, but for the people who will follow you through the opening you create. There are people in your life right now, and people you have not yet met, who are standing in front of walls that will not move for them the way they will move for you, because they have not walked what you have walked, and they do not yet carry what you carry. You are not arriving at your breakthrough alone. You are arriving as the first one, and the passage you make will become the path that others walk. This is why the preparation took as long as it did. It was never only about you. The depth of the formation was proportional to the number of people whose lives would be shaped by what you carry when you finally emerge. A waymaker who is not fully formed is a door that opens too early, before the room on the other side is ready to receive those who follow. The length of your waiting was not a measure of how long it takes God to move. It was a measure of how many people are waiting on the other side of the opening you are about to make. I want you to sit with that for a moment, because I know it might be the first time you have considered your own story from that angle. You have been thinking about your breakthrough as something you need, something you deserve, something that is coming to you after everything you have endured. And all of that is true. But there is a dimension to it that is even larger than what you receive. The breakthrough you are about to step into is also something that the people behind you need. It is the evidence they require that the waiting is not the end. It is the living demonstration that the midnight really does give way to morning. It is the testimony that will reach people in their most desperate hours and remind them that a waymaker came through here. And if they came through, there is a way. You are not just a survivor of this season. You are not simply someone who endured long enough to reach the other side. You are the person whose journey through becomes the road for someone else. That is what a waymaker is, and that is who you are. Now, I want to take a moment to speak to something that waymakers often struggle with as they approach the threshold of their breakthrough, and that is the question of worthiness. After a long season of being unseen, of having your calling questioned by others, and sometimes by ourselves, of carrying wounds that have not yet fully healed, it is natural to arrive at the edge of what is coming and feel a quiet but persistent whisper that says you are not quite ready, that there is still something unfinished in you, that someone more polished, more healed, more consistent, more certain should be the one stepping into this. I want to address that whisper directly and without softness. It is not discernment. It is not humility. It is the last attempt of the old season to keep you standing at the threshold rather than crossing it. Waymakers are not people who arrived at their assignment fully repaired. They are people who carried their wounds across the threshold and discovered that the same hands that had formed them in the wilderness were already on the other side, ready to meet them there. Your readiness is not measured by your wholeness. It is measured by your willingness. And you are here. That is the evidence. Now I want to close this part of our time together with something that is not a declaration or a challenge or a call to action. I want to close it with a blessing, spoken simply and directly over the specific places in you that have carried the most weight. To the part of you that stopped telling people your dreams because you could not bear another round of polite skepticism, may that part find its voice again. And may the words that come out of you from this point forward land in rooms that were built to receive them. To the part of you that lay awake at 3 in the morning, running the same questions in circles, wondering if you had somehow missed your window or misread your own life, may that part finally rest, knowing that the window was never closing, that the reading was never wrong, and that the quiet of those nighttime hours was not emptiness, but depth being added to what you carry. To the part of you that felt the weight of being unseen in rooms where you were present, where you brought your whole self and still somehow felt invisible. May that part know that the invisibility was never a verdict on your worth. Keeping what was sacred from being handled before it was time. To the part of you that grieved the relationships, the career, the silenced dreams, and the eroded self-trust that this season cost you, may that grief be acknowledged now as the honest price of a genuine preparation, and may what was lost be returned to you in forms that exceed what was taken. And to the whole of you, the tired part and the electric part, the doubting part and the knowing part, the part that almost quit and the part that somehow did not, may you walk into what is coming with your hands open and your heart unguarded, because what is arriving has your name on it. It has always had your name on it, and the waymaker in you was always going to be the one to receive it. There is a version of you that is already living on the other side of this threshold, and that version is not a fantasy. It is not a wishful projection. It is the truest and most complete expression of who you were always designed to be, and it is closer to your present reality than anything you have been able to see from inside the waiting season. What I want to do now is walk you through 3 specific areas of your life that are about to transform, not in vague or general terms, but with enough concrete detail that you can begin to recognize the changes when they start arriving, which they already are. The first area is your relationships, and I want to speak to this one first, because it is often the area where chosen ones feel the most vulnerable, the most exposed, and the most uncertain about what they deserve to receive going forward. After years of being misunderstood, after relationships that could not survive the weight of the wilderness season, after learning to need less from people because needing too much led to repeated disappointment, it is natural to arrive at this threshold with a guarded heart, not a closed heart. You would not be here if your heart were fully closed, but guarded, careful, trained by experience to offer connection in measured amounts, rather than in the full and generous way you were originally designed to give and receive it. What is coming in the area of relationships is going to require you to begin loosening that guardedness, not all at once, not carelessly, but genuinely. Because the people who are moving toward you in this next chapter are not the same kind of people who disappointed you in the previous one. They have been shaped by their own wilderness. They carry their own depth. They are not coming to take from you or to misunderstand you, or to require you to make yourself smaller in order to be accepted. They are coming to stand with you at full size, and they will recognize you not despite what you have been through, but precisely because of it. What you will notice first is that old relationships begin to shift without drama. People who have occupied significant space in your world will begin to naturally create distance, not in ways that feel like rejection, but in ways that feel, if you are honest, like relief. And in the space that opens, new connections will begin to appear. Pay attention to the people who ask you real questions and actually wait for the real answer. Pay attention to the ones who do not flinch when you begin to describe the scale of what you sense is coming. Pay attention to the ones whose presence makes you feel more like yourself, rather than less. These are the companions of your next chapter, and they are already beginning to arrive. What you should do during this period is resist the urge to hold new connections at the same arm's length where you have been keeping everyone. Risk being known. Not recklessly, but genuinely. The waymaker that you are was not designed to walk the next chapter alone, and the people coming toward you were not sent to be kept at a safe distance. They were sent to walk with you, and that walking requires you to let them close enough to actually do so. The second area that is about to transform is your sense of purpose, and specifically the question of what to do with your hands right now. In the days and weeks immediately ahead, I said earlier that the answer to the question of your calling is going to come not as a dramatic full-picture revelation, but as one clear small step. I want to build on that now, because there is something important about how waymakers move that is different from how most people expect significant callings to unfold. Most people believe that the clarity of the calling determines the size of the first step. That if the calling is truly large and truly significant, the first action should feel correspondingly large and significant. But that is not how it works for chosen ones. For waymakers, the first step is almost always disproportionately small relative to the eventual scale of what it initiates. It might be a single conversation you have been avoiding. It might be 1 hour per week dedicated to something you have been circling for years without landing. It might be writing the first paragraph of something you have been meaning to write for longer than you want to admit. It might be making 1 phone call, attending 1 gathering, saying yes to 1 invitation that your cautious self would normally decline. The smallness of the step is not an indication of the smallness of the calling. It is the beginning of a sequence, and sequences must begin somewhere. What you should do right now is pay attention to the thing that keeps returning to the surfaces of your awareness. Not the loudest thought or the most dramatic option, but the persistent one. The one that was there last week and the week before, and that is still there now. That persistence is not obsession, it is direction. And your assignment right now is simply to take 1 honest step toward it, and then pay attention to what that step reveals. What you should not do during this period is wait until you feel fully ready, fully healed, fully certain, or fully resourced before you begin. The waymaker does not begin from a position of complete preparation. The waymaker begins from a position of willingness, and the preparation continues to unfold in the walking. Every step you take toward the one clear thing that keeps returning will be met by a corresponding movement from the direction you are walking toward. The path does not fully appear before you step onto it. It appears because you step onto it. The third area that is about to transform is your relationship with provision, with resources, with the material and practical dimensions of your life that have often felt like the most persistent evidence that something was still blocked. And I want to speak to this area with particular care because I know that for many chosen ones, the financial and material dimensions of the waiting season have been among the most humiliating, not just difficult, but specifically humiliating in the way that only sustained scarcity can be. The experience of watching others move forward while you seem to stand still, of working hard and seeing results that did not match the effort, of needing help in seasons when you believed you should have been in a position to give it, leaves a specific kind of mark that goes deeper than the practical difficulty itself. What is coming in this area is not simply more money or more opportunity, though both of those things are part of it. What is coming is the end of the fighting posture, the end of the striving against a current that was always moving against you during the preparation season. What you could not achieve through extraordinary effort in the wrong season is going to begin arriving through faithful presence in the right one. Doors that were locked are going to open. Not all at once, and not without your participation, but with an ease that is going to feel almost unfamiliar after everything you have been through. Resources are going to find you with the same energy you once had to spend hunting them. Opportunities are going to arrive through channels you did not construct and could not have predicted. Connections are going to form that carry provision as a byproduct of the relationship rather than as something you had to negotiate or compete for. What you should do during this period is practice receiving without immediately minimizing what arrives. When something good comes, let it be good. When a door opens, walk through it without first building a case for why it might close again. When provision appears, receive it with open hands and steward it well, and allow it to become the seed of what you then extend to someone else. The waymaker does not hoard what comes through the opening they create. They receive it, steward it, and pass it forward because they understand that the provision was never only for them. It was for everyone who follows them through the passage. You are not about to receive what you fought for. You are about to receive what you were formed for. And there is a difference between those two things that changes everything about how you carry what arrives. What you fought for, you grip tightly because you remember how hard it was to get, and you are afraid of losing it again. What you were formed for, you hold with open hands because you understand that it came not through your own strength, but through a process that was always in the hands of something greater than you. Hold what is coming with open hands. Steward it with your whole heart. And trust that the same faithfulness that formed you through the waiting is the same faithfulness that will sustain you through the receiving. Everything I have spoken over you in this message has been moving toward this moment, and I want to honor that by not rushing through it. We have traveled a long distance together in this conversation, from the trembling anticipation you carried when you first pressed play, through the naming of your signs, through the honest acknowledgement of what the season cost you, through the ancient frameworks of Kairos and midnight, through the three areas that are already shifting, through the name of Waymaker that belongs to you, through the practical shape of what your transformed life is going to look like in the days ahead. That is not a small journey. And I want to begin this final stretch by saying something that I mean with everything in me. Thank you for showing up. Not in the performative way that phrase sometimes gets used. I mean it specifically and personally. You showed up today when you could have scrolled past. You stayed when you could have clicked away. You let the hard parts land instead of deflecting them. You sat with the cost of the waiting season without rushing to the redemption before the grief had been properly acknowledged. That kind of showing up requires something real from a person, and you brought it. The part of you that trusted enough to stay through the whole of this message is the same part of you that has been holding on through the whole of this season. And that part deserves to be honored before we close. I want you to know that you are not alone in what you are carrying. Right now, at this exact moment, all across the world, chosen ones are walking into this exact same message. In different languages, in different time zones, in different circumstances that look nothing like yours on the outside, but that carry the same interior texture, the same exhaustion, the same electric undercurrent, the same sense of standing at the edge of something enormous. You are not an isolated case. You are not the only one who has wondered if the waiting was going to be permanent. You are part of a movement of people who were all being prepared at the same time, in different locations and different stories, for a season that requires all of them to arrive, and you are arriving right now. in this moment, together with more people than you can see from where you are standing. Before I speak one final time about the genius wave, and before I release you into what comes next, I want to give you one more thing to do. Not a practice with steps. Something simpler than that. I want you to take a moment right now, wherever you are sitting, or standing, or lying down. And I want you to imagine that you are holding everything you brought into this message. The exhaustion, the grief over what was lost, the eroded self-trust, the silenced dreams, the nights you could not sleep, the rooms where you felt invisible, the relationships that did not survive the waiting, the career that moved slower than it should have. All of it, held in your hands like a weight you have been carrying for a very long time. And now I want you to imagine setting it down, not throwing it away, because none of it was worthless. Every piece of it contributed to the formation of the waymaker you have become. But setting it down at the threshold of what is coming, leaving it behind you as you step forward, because the next chapter does not require you to carry the full weight of the previous one in order to move through it. The formation is complete. The preparation is finished. The weight that shaped you has done its work, and you are allowed now to put it down. Feel the difference in your body when you imagine that. Feel what it is like to stand at this threshold without the accumulated weight of the entire waiting season pressing down on your shoulders. That lightness is not irresponsibility. It is freedom, and it is yours. Now, woven into this moment of release, I want to pause and speak to you about something that belongs not just to you, but to the space between us, to what has been built here today in the conversation between my voice and your listening. Something real happened here. Something was exchanged that belongs to both of us now, and I do not want to close without honoring it. If this message has moved something in you, if it has named something that needed to be named, if it has given language to an experience you have been carrying without words, then consider pressing like not as a favor to a channel, but as a way of saying, yes, this was real, without needing to find the words for it yourself. And if you leave something in the comments, even a single word, you are ensuring that the next chosen one who arrives here does not feel like they are the first one through the door. You are leaving a mark that says someone was here before you and they stayed, and it was worth it. Share this with one person who is still deep in their waiting, one person who needs to hear their signs named and their midnight reframed and their waymaker identity spoken over them. That is the simplest act of love you can offer someone who is still in the season you are leaving. Choose to remain in this community by subscribing, not as a platform decision, but as choosing to stay at the table where chosen ones gather and speak truth into each other's seasons. And if something moves you to pass a blessing forward to the next person who finds their way here, that quiet offering is in the pinned comment below, with no pressure and no expectation attached to it, simply an open hand if you feel moved to place something in it. Now, one final time, I want to mention the Genius Wave. Not as a closing sales pitch, not as a pressure applied at the moment of vulnerability, but because I promised you honesty throughout this entire message, and honesty requires me to say this. The shift that is coming in your life, the Kairos arrival, the 3 areas of transformation, the Waymaker identity stepping into full expression, all of it is going to require a mind that is operating at the clearest, most aligned frequency it is, capable of producing. The decisions you are about to make, the relationships you are about to step into, the one clear step that is about to become visible, all of these deserve to be met by the fullest version of your cognitive capacity. And if the Genius Wave met you somewhere in the middle of this message and you know it is a yes, it is waiting for you in the pinned comment below. 7 minutes a day, 90 days to decide if it changed anything. The link is there. It belongs to you if you want it. And if this is not the moment for it, that is equally honored. What matters most is not the program. What matters most is that you walk into what is coming with every resource available to you, spiritual, relational, neurological, and human, fully engaged and fully open. You came into this message carrying a trembling anticipation that you were almost afraid to trust. You sensed something enormous was near, but you had been disappointed enough times that hope felt dangerous. I want to close by telling you that what you sensed was accurate. The enormous thing is real. The shift is genuine. The Kairos moment you have been living toward is not a concept or a comfort. It is an appointment, and you are standing at it right now, in this exact moment, with everything. You need to step through it already present inside you. The Waymaker does not wait for permission to make the way. The Waymaker simply begins trusting that the path will appear in the walking, that the companions will arrive in the moving, that the provision will meet the step, and that the same hands that formed them through the wilderness are already present on the other side of the threshold, ready to receive them when they cross. You have been formed. You have been positioned. You have been named. And what is coming for your life is so much larger than the waiting that contained it, that one day, not far from now, you will look back at this season and understand with perfect clarity why every single day of it was necessary. Not one day wasted, not one night of insomnia without purpose, not one closed door without meaning. All of it was the Waymaker being assembled, and the assembly is now complete. Step forward. The way is already being made. There is one more thing I want to say before you go, and it is not information. It is not instruction. It is simply a blessing spoken over the whole of you as you walk out of this space and back into your life, which is no longer the same life you were living when you pressed play. You came here carrying something heavy. You may not leave here carrying nothing, because the weight of a calling does not disappear simply because it has been named. But something has shifted in how you carry it. And that shift, quiet as it may feel right now, is the beginning of everything. You are not the same person who pressed play. Something was deposited in you during this time together, something that does not require your complete understanding in order to work. Seeds do not need the soil to understand them in order to grow. They simply need to be received, and you received what was planted here today, even the parts that landed too deep for words. I want to bless the journey ahead of you, not the easy parts. Those do not need blessing as much as they need enjoyment. I want to bless the hard parts that are still coming, because a Waymaker's road does not become effortless at the threshold. It becomes meaningful. And there is a difference between a hard road that feels pointless and a hard road that you can see clearly is going somewhere real. May every hard step ahead of you feel like the second kind. May the relationships coming towards you find you open enough to receive them fully. May the one clear step that it's about to become visible feel obvious enough that you do not talk yourself out of it. May the provision that is moving in your direction arrive in forms you recognize and steward well and pass forward generously. May the Waymaker in you grow more confident with every passage you create, and may the people who follow you through the openings you make find their own calling awakened by the evidence of yours. May you sleep well in the nights ahead. May the 3 a.m. hours that used to belong to anxiety begin to belong to something quieter and more restful. May the dreams that come to you be clear enough to carry and gentle enough to rest inside. May your body, which has held so much tension for so long, begin to release what it no longer needs to hold. And may you know, in the deep and unargued place beneath all the noise of daily life, that you were always seen. Not partially seen, fully and completely seen by the one who placed the calling inside you before you had any say in the matter, and who has never once looked away from the journey of bringing it to fullness in you. You are chosen, you are formed, you are a waymaker, and what is coming for your life is worth every single day of what it costs to get here. Go forward now. The way is already being made beneath your feet.